Good morning, everyone. I have the shortest commute and I'm rolling in hot, so I'm here. It's great to be here with you today. My name is Roger Harvey. I'm with Bose Public Affairs Group. We are a strategic communications firm based here in Indianapolis and also in Washington, D.C. We do crisis communications, reputation management. As I tell people, when you see bad things on the news, whoever's talking, there's going to be someone like me behind the scenes helping them get through that tough time. And I do a lot of work with schools. In fact, just this week, I'm doing media coaching for 3 different superintendents. And now that we can do everything by Zoom and Microsoft Teams, I don't have to be in person anymore. So it makes my life a little bit easier, but it is always better to be there in person. And so hopefully you all have not had to deal with these types of situations that you see going on around the country. But as I've told folks before, if you haven't yet, you're fortunate, but statistically something is going to happen. Not to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just kind of how it works these days. So it's great to be here with you today. We're going to talk about social media and sharing content and the implications of that. I've got a great group of folks here, panelists with me, and I'm going to let them each talk about themselves in a second. But first, to my immediate left is Nick Stevens. Nick's the senior editor of highschoolot.com for WRAL-TV in Raleigh, North Carolina. Phenomenal TV station. Actually, I interned there when I was at University of North Carolina. Great TV station. So next to him is Tom Kreager. He's with the Tennessean, based in Nashville, Tennessee. The important thing to flag about the Tennessean is it's part of the USA Today network. So when Tom gets a story and people like it, a lot of people get to see it. So it's he's got a lot of, when he generates content, it goes to a lot of places. And then down on the far left is Kevin Conrad, who is with Center Grove High School Sports Network, based in Greenwood, Indiana. And since I'm from South Florida, I don't have any allegiance to Indiana schools, but I will tell you, Center Grove is one of the big boys here in Indiana and does very well. So Kevin keeps busy with talking about a lot of wins for all the various programs they have there. As I mentioned, this session is going to be about the use of social media, and this is going to be concerning everyone involved in high school sports, so students, coaches, parents, administrators, and the media covering the events. We're going to discuss the good and the bad. There's always some good and bad about sharing high school content and sports-related content on social media. And then the other thing we're going to dive into is what should parents, media, and other fans keep in mind as they capture these videos in real time and push them out. You know, it might be a phenomenal play that an athlete's making, but guess what? There's probably someone on the receiving end that maybe missed his position, or is going to maybe be ridiculed for not playing as well as they should have in that particular play. We're going to talk about that. And then we're also going to discuss the effects of posting, parents in particular, posting controversial material regarding their children and how that impacts decisions made by coaches and officials. So first, to start things off, I'm going to turn over to each of the panelists to tell a little bit about themselves. And Nick, I'll start off with you.
All right, my name is Nick Stevens. I'm managing editor at High School OT, which is part of WRAL-TV in Raleigh, as Roger said, but we actually cover the entire state of North Carolina, so we're not just in the Raleigh-Durham area, which is where WRAL-TV mostly covers. So we get a really unique perspective on things across the state. We have a really diverse state in North Carolina. So I've been covering high school sports since I was an intern at WRAL my senior year of high school in 2006. Worked there while I was at NC State University and have been here ever since. So this is literally the only professional job I've ever had.
So I didn't know about NC State. Let's move on.
Well, we did beat UNC last year.
Yeah, I know. Who didn't beat us last year?
Go ahead. That's me. I'm Nick.
Hi, I'm Tom Kreager. I'm the high school sports editor at the Tennessee and also the South Region high school editor for our USA Today network. We have about eight sites in Tennessee, from Knoxville to Memphis. Friends with Mr. Varlas over there, we're at competing sites, but still friends. Also oversee our Mississippi coverage at the Clarion Ledger and Hattiesburg American, and also have a little bit of help creating strategy for our North Carolina and South Carolina sites. So based in Tennessee, but have kind of a footprint or handprint in a lot of other places. been in this role for about 7 years, started as just the statewide high school sports editor. We kind of reinvented, which has kind of been adopted by Gannett. We've reinvented how we cover high school sports, got away from game stories, got into more writing about people, writing about kids. So that's what we really enjoy doing. Obviously there's that game-winning drive or game-winning score, we're going to write about that, but we don't tell the normal game stories. Really want to write about people. A little bit different about me right now, I've got a kid playing high school football. Very different. He's a junior, he's on the JV team. Gives me a whole different perspective. I'm the one in the stands telling my wife, be quiet, be quiet. No, we don't say that, you know, because I'm like, I've been on that, I've seen it, and you know, I'm very like, sit there and watch, cheer, and you know, I guess what you want to be, but I'm constantly hear the people behind me. It's like, oh, what are you? I mean, I just kind of shake my head a lot of times, and very different world now being a parent of a high school athlete.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Conrad, and as Roger said, I'm with the Center Grove Sports Network. On social media, we're known as CG Sports Network. I started this we're in our 16th year now, of covering not only high school events in our community, but also we cover youth events, middle school events. We've really broadened our coverage throughout the years. We're basically a social media platform. We have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, not to brag, but we're up to about 35,000 followers, and that's over 16 years. So I'm very, very pleased with that. And our content, sometimes what I'll do, I'll just sit back and have a free moment. I'll scroll through maybe Instagram or Facebook account and just look back over all the accomplishments that our community and our young athletes have done. And it's pictures, it's positive. Sometimes it just makes me feel like, okay, are we making an impact with our coverage? And when I do that, I just feel very proud of what we're able to do for our community. I've been doing high school sports in the state of Indiana now for 28 years. I kind of did a little research on myself and realized, wow, I've been doing this for a long time. And I started in high school. I was in high school radio as a freshman back in the 1980s, and I just loved sports. I played sports, and for some reason, I've always enjoyed the high school level, more so than college or any other level. I've covered pro sports and college sports, but for some reason, my heart belongs in high school sports. So I'm just very proud of for our content that we produce for our community. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Let's start off with big picture for the three of you, and Kevin, I'll start with you and we'll come back the other way. Talk a little bit about, you're a little bit unique in that you're obviously focused on the Center Grove network, so to speak, not covering the whole state unless they come in and fall victim to Center Grove and a particular sport. But that being said, how do you focus on pushing out what I'll call positive content or stories that tie in a little bit what Tom was talking about, the human emotion part of it? How do you go about doing that?
Well, that's a big reason why I started Center Grove Sports Network back in 2008. I just felt like we didn't really have local radio, we didn't have local TV in our community. We do have one newspaper, but I just felt like there were so many great stories that aren't being told in our community. And that's a big reason why I started. And I feel like as we've grown, obviously we're covering a lot of great stories. And I actually put out on our social media posts every so often and say, hey, parents and fans, if there's a great story out there, it could be a third grader, it could be maybe somebody that's in college, an alum of Center Grove. Email me the information, send me a picture, send me the details of the accomplishment. And oh my gosh, when I put that out there, the response was incredible. A lot of times your summertime, we don't have athletics going on, at least at the high school level, so it's a little bit slower. So that's when I usually put that message out there, and I've gotten anything from a young man is actually I think a third or fourth grader. He's in a rodeo, and I guess he's very good at what he does. He's a national champ. I would never known that. But someone took the time, sent me the information, and we put it out there. So those are the kind of stories we're looking for, the positive stories from our community at all levels. I do my best to try and research social media to see what those stories are, but I don't see everything, so that's why I encourage our coaches, our fans, and our parents to submit information to me, and I've gotten a great response.
Great. Tom?
Well, last week we wrote a story, one of our people wrote a story about a local business was giving like $5 million to a high school for a new weight room, field house type thing. And we got blasted, and for some reason we got blasted on, well, why aren't you writing about, you know, the academic side and all that stuff? And just saying, y'all, you write about sports. I'm like, well, I'm a high school sports editor, we're gonna write about sports. But then I went through and said, okay, if we wanna have that conversation, let's have that conversation. So I started posting, all right, what about this kid who graduated early and is at Virginia Tech now? He won the biggest award that Metro Nashville has to offer, the Hume Award, and then part of that is academics, community service. I posted that story. Well, what about this story? I posted another story, and then they said, oh, by the way, the school that got the donation, they just had a kid that signed with Tennessee. Oh, this kid that signed with Tennessee had offers from Harvard and every Ivy League. So don't tell us we're not doing those stories. And the school that got the donation has got great student athletes. And then, you know, then they try to, you know, other things, and finally one of the coaches said, you're talking about these athletes that may not have opportunities. He goes, but let me tell you, our valedictorian and salutatorian were black athletes. So this is not a, hey, this thing is helping everyone across the school campus. And then finally he changed his tune and said, well, I was just trying to get you guys motivated. But what I'm saying is, we tell the good stories. People like to remember the bad stories. You know, we can't help it if there's a brawl on a basketball court and we have to write about that. You know, and part of our job is to get the video of what happened so people can see, this is what happened, all right? We can't look the other way. If the high school association, if that means the high school association is gonna ban them from the postseason, we gotta report that. That's our job. But that's a small percentage of what we write. And I think a lot of people will remember those things. And I mean, we write a lot of uplifting. I'm working on a story for the last 2 years on a high school athlete who's one of the top athletes for next year's football class. And he went through a terrible time where his brother was shot and killed in a gang initiation type thing. I talked to his mom last year and I said, hey, I would love to tell this story because this kid is a great kid. His mom just burst into tears right in front of me. I'm like, I'm not ready to tell that story yet. At some point, I hope to tell that story. We may never tell that story because the family may not be ready to tell us that story. But we're looking for those types of stories. And you know, we always ask the coaches. Coaches will say, write about Joe Smith. He's a good kid. Well, we need a little more than he's a good kid, because you know. But we really want to tell the good stories. I think a lot of people want to tell the good stories, but there's the good and the bad that goes with it.
Just building off of that, you know, when we're covering high school athletics, almost, I'd say 98%, maybe more, are the good stories. But the big stories tend to be the ones that get the attention and are not always positive. But I think that covering high school sports, and one of the reasons that I keep doing what I'm doing, I get asked all the time, don't you want to cover, you know, UNC or NC State or the Carolina Panthers? And I'm like, no, because here you have more freedom to do more things, first of all. You get more access, you get to know the people. You know, there are several professional athletes that came through North Carolina high schools that I know very well personally because I've known them since they were freshmen in high school. But there was an instance, and I told this group this story on a call we had last week. Right before, I think it was like a week before the world shut down because of COVID, I was working on a project with a school in Durham, Southern Durham High School, and Durham has had a really big rise in gun violence, particularly when it comes to kids, teenagers. And the football coach at Southern Durham requires his seniors to do a community service project as a group every year. And that particular group of seniors decided they were going to focus on the gun violence issue in their community. And most of the deaths that happened at two high schools, happened with kids from two high schools in Durham. One of those was Southern Durham. And they came up with this program called Guns Down, Lives Up. And we were going to embed with them for the rest of the school year and produce like this 30 for 30 style video with the team. COVID changed that because we couldn't do it anymore, neither could they. But I went over there to the school one day just to sit down and talk with a group of seniors. There was about 15 of them, and I just wanted to kind of get a rapport going with them before we stuck a camera in their face and put a microphone on them. And they told us, they said, you know, you guys, talking about the media, and I hate that term, but the media, that when there's a shooting in Durham, the police show up and we show up, and as soon as the blue lights are gone, so are we. And we don't tell anything else about what's going on in the community. And so this was an opportunity. We did a story still, but not what we wanted to. But this was an opportunity for us to go in and say, look, here are kids in Durham who you see on the TV every night talking about this person's been shot, this many people, there was this drive-by, shots fired at this location. Well, here are kids in that community who are actually using their status as high school athletes on a football team that is very good to do something, to make a difference. And that is how you can take something negative and turn it into something positive by covering high school sports. And that's something that I think we all should be doing who are involved in covering high school athletics.
So building on that point, Nick, what is your analysis for all three of you? What's your barometer, if you will, or how do you determine if something comes in and you process, is this going to be fair to this kid, whether it's a highlight where someone's getting dunked over or what have you? I mean, do you give that thought about what the repercussions are, or how do you process that?
So I have somebody who works for me whose sole job is social media, and when we'll get stuff sent to us, we have a big team of people who are out every night covering things, so we capture stuff on our own as well. And yes, somebody gets dunked on, we put that on our Instagram page, that's going to go viral. We know that. And do we post stuff like that? Sometimes. But what we have to consider is, okay, what happens in that video? If it's a kid making a great play, he dunks, and there's a kid trying to take a charge or whatever underneath him, that's part of the game. Now, if the reaction is the kid stands over him and makes a bunch of ridiculous actions and whatnot, or if there's a technical foul, or we had a situation one time where that happened in a playoff game and people rushed the court in the middle of the game. Stuff like that, now we are trying to have a discussion about, okay, is this even worthy of posting? Did it count? If it didn't count, why would we post it? If he gets a technical foul, why would we don't want to promote that. Like, that's not how, we want to be seen as a brand either, for, let alone what we want to help promote. So it's a case-by-case thing where we have to decide, is it relevant? Is it part of the story that we're trying to tell the game? Or is it, are we click chasing? Right.
Clickbaiting, I think is the term.
Clickbaiting, sure, yes.
That's a good, what you said was really spot on. And I would even take it to, we've had discussions in our office beyond video, but with photos. If it's the state championship and your team lost, do we have to have that, we have those discussions like, are we going with the crying shot? And there was a time, our executive editor had kids playing high school sports, and she said, we need to really think about that. And the photo people kind of said, well, that's part of the emotion. I mean, we don't want to write about Team A losing the state championship and having someone jumping up and down and say, yay, because that doesn't depict what the story is. So it's like, I think sometimes we try to have those discussions and say, all right, is this the right portrayal? And sometimes we will go that route. Sometimes we'll say, that maybe, sometimes it's where you don't see the straight on whatever emotion, or maybe it's a group, where it's not just singling out one person crying. But I remember one year we ran that picture, and I was really good friends with the family. She was a freshman. She told me later on, she's like, I saw that picture and it made me mad, and it made me determined, like, we're never walking off that floor with a loss, because I don't want to see a picture of me crying when we lose the state championship. We want to win, and they won like back-to-back state titles. But I think we have those discussions. I mean, we even now are having discussions if we're writing about a brawl on the basketball court or football field, are we going to identify those people that were in that fight? And it's now like one from a lawsuit standpoint, we're like being very cautionary. We'll wait till we get a referee's report. But then also the discussion is, do we really need to name that person, right? Is that person we've never written about that person, do we really need to write about that person pushing someone and starting a fight? Is that really, really necessary, or can you say a fight broke out, be a little more general? Those are discussions we now have. It's like our best practices. If a fight happens, they call me, and I'll have that discussion with my boss, and we'll talk it through. Sometimes, I mean, I hate to say it, but if it's the #1 player in the country and he throws a punch to start the fight, they're probably going to be mentioned in the story because it's a you kind of held them a little more accountable. I hate to say it, that's kind of how it is. But if it's a guy that we've never written about, the first time you're going to write about them in a fight, probably going to have that discussion. Is that really what we want to do?
The barometer that I use, is this going to be bulletin board material made for the opposing team? I remember it was years ago, we were playing in the state tournament in football, and we were playing another team who was undefeated coming to our venue to Center Grove to play. And I think a local TV station, for whatever reason, put a 17, 18-year-old young man, football player, their star player, on TV saying some, comments about Center Grove and Center Grove's defense. Well, it didn't go too well that night for this young man and the team. They did not score. They barely got first downs. And it just, to me, that wasn't necessary. I didn't think that TV station needed to put that out there. Yeah, probably got a lot of clicks and got a lot of plays, but I just don't think the young man, again, he's 16, 17 years old, and again, did not go well. And there were some comments on social media, comments I think after the game as well. I just think we have to do a better job protecting our 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds when we're putting microphones in their face. Something I tend not to try to do too much, if I can, try to record interviews with student athletes versus going live. When you go live, you just don't know what they might say, and so you got to be very careful. For the most part, I've never had anything come back and burn me, but there was a few times where maybe we've used some guest commentators, student athletes, which I think is great. Anytime they can get out in front and hold a microphone and do some public speaking, I think that's great for them. And I've gotten some really good feedback from parents that really enjoy that. But no, I just think we got to do a better job in trying to protect our student athletes. And remember, again, that's what they are. They're student athletes.
And it's not just kids, adults are that way too. I remember, you don't know what they're going to say either sometimes. I spent 18 years in television news, and actually I started out in sports when I was at Carolina. There's a guy a couple years older than me at Carolina who did pretty well for himself, Stuart Scott, and he was a mentor of me of sorts, helped me get my first job in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I started in sports, and I remember back then, we talked about this on the pre-call, I'd go cover, when I was in South Carolina, I was in Myrtle Beach at the ABC affiliate, so Clemson was obviously very big at the time. And go cover the game, and you show highlights of the game, and then you talk to the players and the coach, and on the call we had through this in the first quarter and the second. I mean, you got to be thinking much more strategically when you cover. And I'm going to use Clemson as an example, but there's got to be, it's the offensive lineman, right, that's coming back off from being sick or whose mother had passed away or what have you. And so I want to talk a little bit about that, Tom, because I thought you really struck a chord there. At least you talked about how Twitter has changed the dynamic for you guys. Why don't we start with you, and then we'll go to Nick, and then over to Kevin.
Yeah, I think the phrase I tell people all the time when I'm on different things is Twitter killed the game story. So let's forget about it and move on. So because of that, we've changed what we do, everything. But Twitter is so different now. I mean, it's in social media in general. Now we're trying to really double down on Instagram and things like that. But Twitter is so different, and it forces us, like the one thing we always have discussions with our writers before every Friday night. It's like, what are you writing about? We go in there with a plan now. We're not just going to say, we're just going to wing it. It's like, tell me a good story, and like this is what we're going to go in and do, and really and truthfully, right, in a way we do things, the game is basically the media opportunity. It's our chance to talk to that person, and we can weave what happened in the game in this story. It may be, with the idea that we can always punt, and no pun intended, but you could change what you're going to do if something happens weird at the game or whatever. But we really change, like, hey, we're gonna write about this person or this person. We'll have a couple of different plans. But social media has just changed exactly. I mean, people ask me all the time, well, why don't you do this? It's like, because no one's reading it. I mean, in the world of analytics, I've been on this morning I looked at our analytics, like what drove subscriptions for us yesterday in high schools, what people are reading. We are very, writers now or journalists are now very analytics driven, and that's something that changes. So we have to understand what will drive traffic. We're an audience building company. So, but that doesn't mean we're looking for clickbait. I will say we're not looking for clickbait. We want to tell really good stories. I tell people all the time, like, we want to write stories that people want to subscribe to our paper to read them. And I don't think you do that with clickbait. So I think that is the difference between us and whatever. But I mean, yeah, Twitter's changed everything. I thought it was great. Now, I mean, Twitter's gotten so negative. I mean, social media is just negative in general, I think.
Social media is negative in all, in everything, not just high school sports. Just to kind of add to that, you know, I think that it's important. We know this because we live it every day, but everybody else, yes, like we believe that we have a role to play in helping promote high school athletics and positive behavior. Sometimes that goes head to head with the fact that we're also a business and we have to be profitable to keep our jobs, right? And so that kind of goes back to the viral post we were talking about a minute ago. Like those types of things, we know will get people's eyeballs on content, and so there are some of us who, you know, are more, I don't know how to put this, willing to do that, I guess. And social media can really help drive that kind of traffic, which I guess would be clickbait. But I do think that most of us out there, we're not trying to create that type of content, and we're not trying to use social media that way. We use social media at High School OT as a marketing tool. That's really it. We want to market our content because we don't make money on social media. We make money when you come to High School OT or when you download our app or you subscribe to our newsletter. That's how we make our money. So if we're using it any other way, you know, great. It's great that we have however many thousand followers. But if they're not coming to our own products, it doesn't really matter to us. So that's kind of how we have had to change our approach to social media.
I would say with our social media presence, I think we're so busy now. Be able to post the game scores. I was doing it last night. Our volleyball team just opened up the season, and I think that the coach texted me last night and says, we're just now leaving the gym, and I think it was about 9:45, 10 o'clock at night. And they had an hour drive ahead of them, so I'm sure they got back about 11 o'clock last night. But she sent me scores. I've got parents that help me out with pictures, and we had everything that you needed to know about that volleyball match last night on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, probably about 10:30, 10:45. So again, it's so fast, and you're right, the game day coverage is so different. Now, I do also, besides social media content, I do write freelance for our local magazine, and my articles are feature in nature. The editor at first said, are you going to do like game results? I'm like, no, this is more about a student athlete maybe overcoming some kind of adversity, maybe some kind of accomplishment. And he had his doubts, and I started writing for them, and he really was surprised with the content that I was able to provide for them in the magazine. So, but no, I think it is a game changer. Social media has changed everything. I mean, you can do in-game updates, scores, and with the pictures, video highlights. It has changed. I know the print guys you guys had to pivot here in the last probably 10 years.
Well, I think along with that, what I'm seeing in Tennessee or in the Nashville area is there's so many high school kids now that have, Williamson County has this thing called OTL where they're doing social graphics, like social cards, and then it's like the types of things I've told my bosses, we need to hire some of these people to do graphics for us every week. I mean, and they're putting the scores out there, and it's like, there's so much competition for the score and who did what that, and it's all out there instantaneously. That's great, but then comes the negative stuff, and I imagine that's where we're headed toward. But the negative stuff then comes with that of there's something happens on the field and it's quickly posted, and before anyone can really realize, well, how many times we posted something and it's like, that's not really what happened. Once you sat down and talked to the coach, oh no, that wasn't what happened. It was this, and that's the thing we've gotten. So where Twitter is, we want to post things so quickly. Sometimes it's like maybe we need to wait and see what really happened.
And so to that point, if we look back, I would say 10, 15 years ago, each of the primary platforms for media at the time, radio, print, TV, they all kind of stayed in their lane. The print guys, they were the in-depth, and this was this way in news too. The TV guys were flashy pictures, scratch the surface, and radio, had kind of a hybrid. And then lately what we've seen is most of the print photographers have been, by their parent companies, have been sent to, and I say school, but training to shoot video. So you've got still photographers that are now capturing video. So if you go on a print website, a traditional print website like Tom's or TV or radio, what are you going to see? You're going to see video of everything on all platforms. That's what everybody wants, is video. To that point of having the video, one of the things that I think is interesting, and we talked a little bit about this prior to the session, is how the social media age, is what we've seen over the last 10 to 12 years, is merging, and sometimes some would say even conflicting, with the highlight age. And where I'm going with the highlight age is a lot of the parents that many of you all deal with in various forms, whether Johnny or Sally isn't playing enough, or you got them in the wrong position or what have you, a lot of them are looking for scholarship opportunities. Their kid's going to be the next superstar. So what's happening is these parents, if they have means to do so, are hiring companies or individuals to shoot video at the games. And so if you think about a court, let's just take a basketball court, and you got Knicks people, what you would view as traditional credentialed media. You got Tom and the print guys, home and away. So you've got 10 to 12 on any given night of people that are traditional, what you would view as traditional media. But then you got 4 or 5 players on each team. They got somebody. So now I'd like to hear from you guys. But, sometimes part of the battle, the strategy is just jockeying to cover it. So let's talk a little bit about that and that parent age. Tom, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're jockeying. During basketball season is the worst, because you're jockeying for that spot on the end line, and there's so limited time, and you might have, we might have a photographer at a game with me. Probably we will, because I usually am at one of the top games. So he or she's taking photos. I'm responsible for doing my own video with my iPhone 14, 13, whatever it is now. So I'm taking my own video, trying to get the highlights, trying to stay at a basketball game, you're trying to get away, from the cheerleaders, trying to get where the refs will let you, trying to get where you're not going to be videoing the refs behind the whole time. You're kind of trying to move around. And then you throw in, 3 or 4 people that are just doing highlights, and they just might be hired for that team. They might be hired for that individual. We have some photographers that are hired to shoot individual players, so those people have pictures throughout the year. It is at some high-profile games. You better get there early, and you're fighting for your spot, because there's so many places. And in some places, I know in Metro Davidson, they're getting to the point where they're not letting those guys in there that are just there to do highlights for different individuals. They're asking for certified credentials. They want to see that, hey, this is my Tennessean badge, or my News Channel 5. Well, News Channel 5 is going to come up with a big camera. You're going to let them in, let's be honest. But that's the hard part now, is that the word media is really, really blurred. So people say, well, you posted that viral video. I'm like, it wasn't me though. It was the person standing beside me. I didn't capture that, or I didn't post that. And it's just, but people assume those are media people. Those people have never had training. We're letting those people on media, on the baseline. They don't know journalism ethics. They never had that class. So that's the blurred where we're at today. And I love it when I'm at the state tournament and I'll see the student journalists come. That's great, because you can kind of work beside them, you can help them a little bit. But then you see 1 or 2 will sneak in and somehow will get a team credential, and they're videoing their team highlights or whatever, and they're in it for them. And it's a different, total different. The sideline is totally different in 2023 than it was 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
To just add a little bit to what Tom said, you're right, sidelines are getting more crowded, whether it be basketball, football. I use a a local photographer. She does fantastic pictures for us. And we played in the state championship this past year at Lucas Oil Stadium in football. And I could just see, I never really talked to her about it, but when she sends me the pictures, what I see is a young man, we're getting ready to run on the football field, you want to get that opening shot, and all I can see is a young man in her picture. I mean, kind of an etiquette thing there with media. You know, you check with each other, you know, am I in your shot, am I okay here, things of that nature, those that have worked in the business. But some of the younger ones maybe haven't taken those classes, don't have that experience. But I just noticed she took about 20 pictures in this young man's head in every single picture. So they was unusable. And so someone probably needs to take some time to explain to that young man, hey, we all get a position here on the field or whatever to get the shot. You know, be respectful for each other and don't move. And that's the other thing. Also, some of the young ones, they will move and go right into your shot and things of that nature. So, but no, we want to encourage the young student athletes or the students to come out and cover the events. I just think maybe for us that have gone through it, maybe take that time and help them out and train them and share with them things that kind of like that sideline etiquette, if you will.
So we have this problem, particularly in basketball in North Carolina. Big sport for us, and a lot of the gyms are not huge, especially along the baselines. You have very limited space, and this past season, we had situations where our actual credentialed staff could not get a spot to shoot games because there were so many of these highlight companies or whatever they are shooting on the baseline. And so it really irritated me at first. And then I was like, okay, well, they're not going away. We're not going to be able to stop it. So how do we work with them? So we have actually identified some of them who we have kind of vetted, and we are trying to teach them, okay, here's how we do this. Here's how we do things ethically. Here's how we do things, you know, in a respectful way for other people at other outlets. Just this weekend on Saturday, we just had our preseason week of football in North Carolina last week. And we host a big jamboree scrimmage that High School T puts on, and that was on Saturday. And I'm down on the field shooting, and I can't get a shot of what's the game-winning, win a scrimmage, game-winning touchdown attempt here. Because there's people all over the place, and I'm like, this is our own event, and I can't even do this. But we actually recruited a few more people to come, and we're going to train them and help them. A lot of them we use to actually put together one of our big products each year, which is, we call it High School T Live, but basically it's the NFL Red Zone channel for high school football in North Carolina, and we go game to game to game all night long. And they're going to help us shoot some of that video. And so, you know, a lot of these people that we run into are high school kids or college students who are interested in this field. And so I think it's an opportunity for us as people who've been doing this for a little bit longer to kind of reach those people and bring them in and teach them something about what we do and why we do it and how they can help you know, benefit the coverage of high school athletics.
And that probably, I'm assuming, is something more states are going to be looking for ways to try to work with these people and try to neutralize the situation. To your point, it's not going to go away. I mean, the competition is there. People want the highlights of their kids so they can package up, send to colleges or schools for recruiting. Let's talk a little bit, I guess, big picture, and this is for all three of you. You know, when something really bad happens, and the video, oftentimes, as it is in news, is by not a credentialed member of the media, it's an eyewitness that happens to have that iPhone and record something, and then it takes off. You know, a lot of times as it relates to you all, when things like that happen on the court, there's lots of emotion, whether it's players, a lot of times it's parents, you know, fans that are going after each other. When you see that type of a video, and unfortunately we're seeing it more and more across the country, what's social media use? Is there any positive that can come out of a video like that? I mean, how do you just, you know, obviously there's going to be pressure on you to show it because your competitors are showing it. But how do you know, is there a positive that can come out of using video like that?
I think it depends. You know, whenever we get videos sent to us or anything sent to us, the first thing we do is we vet it, which we have to verify that it is what they say it is. You know, we're not going to just blindly post something. If it is important, or you know, if it's newsworthy, if it has an impact on people or something that we're covering, then we're more likely to use that. So we had an instance of in 2019. There was a big brawl at a basketball playoff game, and they sent us the video. And I mean, it was to the point where the police were using pepper spray, and one of them had a taser out, and people were being arrested. Like, it was a big story. In that instance, we used that video because that is part of the story. Like, that's an important thing to show. I also think that showing some of that stuff, you know, if you, I don't know that I would put something like that on social media, but in our reporting, we would definitely show it. And I think that's important because we can talk about, like, oh, there's bad behavior, and you know, people mistreat the referees and all this stuff. That's great, but when you actually see it happening, it makes it more real for people. Like, you can actually understand, you know, the video we watched last night in here, that stuff is not just people making up stories, and it's not just happening one time. It is happening regularly, and it's a real situation that has to be dealt with.
As far as vetting goes, our policy, due to copyright issues, is they've got to sign a release. First thing they have to do is sign a release form that we have permission to use it on all platforms, all papers, and getting at USA Today, et cetera, et cetera. That's just because we haven't done that, and at times copyrights will keep kicking the butt. But a lot of times, also, if it's a big brawl I quickly realized, right, there's going to be potential postseason ramifications. They may be kicked out of the playoffs. So my first thing is I'll reach out to TSBA and say, hey, if you're probably going to get the video at some point in your investigation, I'm doing basically a Freedom of Information Act, and I'm just asking for, you know, public record. I'd like to get a copy of that, and we will put that on our site. And I think a lot of it is, you think, well, that's clickbait, Tom. Well, no, it's not, because you're going to have people walk away from that game, and they deep down they know, oh, we may not be playing in the playoffs. But I think there are going to be people saying, oh, it wasn't that bad. That's overblown. That's not that bad. And then you see the videos like, well, how in the world is that, you know, that is not overblown? And then sometimes I've looked at them and it's like, no one's going to call this a brawl. I mean, there's like nothing here. And then sometimes it's been, hey, it was just a fight, it was broken out. It's not nothing that's going to give you postseason ban. So I think it works both ways, and I think people need to see it because you can describe it, but if there are always going to be the people from those schools try to downplay what really happened. And I think if you really want to improve what happened, you need to be able to see it up front and say, this is what happened. This is more severe than what people are making it. And what TSBA will do is, like, you know, their thing is they'll give them a 2-year postseason ban, which is great, but then they give them, you know, basically you set up 1 year, but they gives them a chance for those schools to say, hey, you need to get together and make amends. And they'll do community projects together, and it's great, and then they come and they propose, and we'll write about, hey, their postseason ban was lifted because they did X, Y, Z. They did these communities. They did a community service together. They met here. They did this with parents, and they did all these steps to make sure this doesn't happen again. And I think if you don't see the video, sometimes you don't get to that point, because people need to realize, the coaches need to realize, hey, this is worse than what you're trying to really portray.
Can I just add one thing to that? So we, back in 2019, in football season, there was a football game in North Carolina between two rivals. One of them has been perpetually bad for a long time. They don't win very many games. The other one is a state power, and they win a lot of games. And there was an argument, I think it was week 1 or 2 of the season, there was an argument on the field, benches cleared. And the NCHSA has a policy that if 3 or more people are ejected for fighting, you're ineligible for the state playoffs. Well, they reviewed the game film and everything, and the one team that's not very good was ruled ineligible for the state playoffs. The other team only had 2 players ejected for fighting. They were eligible to continue playing and qualify for the playoffs. Well, the team that is not very good normally ended up having the best season they've had in like 2 decades. They were not eligible to go to the state playoffs. They would have gone. The state senator from that area found out about it. The school did not protest it. They didn't appeal it, nothing. But the state senator in that area found out about it, and he went to the NCHSAA and demanded that they let them into the playoffs. Obviously, they said, we're not doing that. We're not going to make an exception to our rule. Well, 4 years later, we are still in the middle of the state legislature in North Carolina trying to take over the NCHSAA, and it all comes from that instance. And that video, no one can get a copy of it. We don't know where it is. We've asked for, we have done a Freedom of Information Act on it. It doesn't, both schools say it doesn't exist. So the senator who's out there saying, oh, it wasn't that bad, it was like 3 kids and no one was throwing punches, it's just his word against the NCHSA's word now. And so, had we as the media in North Carolina been more proactive at the time and gotten that video, perhaps we're not in the situation we're in now, where, there have been really significant changes to North Carolina high school sports because of the actions of some of the state legislators. Like, they can't even fine people, so if schools have situations now where they have a bunch of ejections, the NCHSA, by state law, cannot issue a fine for anything anymore because of this situation.
So it sounds like, listening to you all, I think the difference is, and correct me if you feel differently, but when people where you get criticized of, well, you're clickbait or whatever, to me, if you just post the video of the fight and you say, take a look at what happened in Rockingham, right, North Carolina.
That's a good guess.
Yeah, just dumb luck. But if you do that and there's no context, and so it's 20 seconds, that to me is clickbait, right? If you're, as these panelists said, if you actually are reporting on the event with context of, and I think context is the key here, you got coach perspective, right, coaches, you might have the referee perspective, you might have the state association talking about their investigation. That to me is reporting, and I think there are opportunities for positive to come out because you see there's ramifications when you act like a knucklehead. Things can happen, and coaches talking about what happened or didn't happen. But to me, I think there's the difference, and unfortunately, people throw it all into the clickbait bucket, and that's where you see a lot on Twitter and Instagram and others. It's just the 20 seconds of the brawl, and then 1,000 comments from people that don't have any idea what really happened.
And in today's world, a lot of people just read a headline or look at the video, and they don't do anything more to it, and they have opinions like, well, you didn't read the story, did you? Because it explained exactly the ramifications or explain anything else you wanted to know. That's where we're at now. People look at headlines, they look at the video, the picture, and they make their own assessment without reading anything.
Right. All right. Let's pivot, for lack of a better term, sports term, and let's talk about, all right, what can we do to? So we've identified the negative out there. What do you all do, or how do you all process, if you do a filter, when you've got videos, you're pushing out content on social media? How do you go about trying to, if you can, looking for opportunities to promote values of, education-based high school athletes? So these are, people that are doing well on the field or trying their best. They don't have to be the star player, but they're trying their best, but they're really strong academically, and there's lots of awards given out but people care more about first team All-American versus high school, did well, National Honor Society.
If I could, I'll take that first. Something that I try to do, again, I run Center Sports Network, so I'm the sports editor, sports director, if you will. I try to present our results as team-oriented. I know there is individual accolades and things of that nature, but I try to keep it more about the team. I know there's superstars and things of that nature, but my posts, I try to put in there, the pertinent information, the score, who do they play, who do they beat, what's the record, if there's a ranking involved, a state ranking, when's the next game, things of that nature. How do you get a ticket, and things of that nature. Obviously, we're going to put in there some key stats, and also we're going to try to get pictures to go with that. I try to vary up our pictures. Don't just show the star player all the time. but I'm a very team-oriented type person. That's how I played sports. When I coached a little bit back in the day, I just feel like we need to present high school sports more than ever as a team effort, because I feel like with college, and particularly maybe with the pro games, they really promote the individuals. And I just feel like, again, I just want to put it out there more as a team.
We have a lot of awards we do give out. Like we do we've had sports awards program, and always the one is my dad always say, oh, you're the emotional one. I always get teary-eyed when we hand out the Courage Award, and it's like, to me, it's the most important award we will give out that night. This last one was a girl that, you probably saw national news. She was in St. Louis and got hit by a car, and she had both legs amputated. And now she's overcoming. She got a scholarship to NTSU. She's a volleyball team manager. We just posted a video on Instagram which went viral of her taking her first steps with prosthetics. So we like to tell those stories as well. But I think also to kind of a slight pivot is, I use social media when we cover a lot of with our high school association rules, what they do with rules. Some people think it's controversial. I think it's a great decision, but they now are fining schools that if there's a fan ejected, that school is now fined. And to me, that takes ownership. The administration will now take ownership and make sure those fines, those ejections don't happen, or they'll remove them before it gets to that point. And we posted the story, and there was everyone was like, all this stuff is like, guys, I said, the schools wanted something done, but I kind of would use that to explain, this is why this is happening. And like, we just had a thing last night on our shot clock has been postponed for 3 years, and some coaches are upset. Well, I've had lengthy conversations like, this is why a shot clock doesn't work in Tennessee right now. And it's just like, it works in your affluent area, but there are parts of the state that can't afford it or find people for this. And so I use Twitter sometimes I'm more or less the explainer of saying, this is why this rule is in place. You cannot like it, but this is the thought process behind the rule. I think that's real important in today's world, because people just jump to conclusions and they don't really see their side. They can still not like it, but at least they understand the thought process behind the rule.
I agree 100% with what you just said. We do a bunch of awards and stuff too. Tom Suter, his long-running award honoring scholar athletes. We also do a Courage Award that is named after Stuart Scott, another former WRAL employee. We do that with his family. We do things like that, but I think the most effective way that anybody in the media can help promote the positive side of this is just through our day-to-day reporting. What we choose to cover, the stories we choose to tell, really can have more of an impact than anything. We go to the board meetings in Chapel Hill, DSHSA, and we tell here's the next sportsmanship initiative that they're doing, or here's the latest rule changes. But those are also technical that people who are not really deeply involved on a day-to-day basis, like, it's not going to resonate with them. You've got to tell people stories about people for them to understand it and to really connect with it. So I think that's the best way that we can make that kind of an impact in high school sports coverage.
And just checking the time, we've got a few minutes left. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, but I guess I'd like to open up to the three of you here. So we've identified kind of where we've been, where we are now. Let's look ahead down the road. How do you see this this intersection of social media fascination and our immediate desire to have everything known in the next 12 seconds merge with what you all are trying to do out there in terms of covering high school athletes, remembering that these are 16 and 17-year-olds, and I agree with Nick just personally. When you're with these guys and gals when they're really young, and then they become superstars, they always will say, at least the ones I know, will always be like, man, it was the best time when I was in high school. Because there's pressure in high school, but they don't have to deal with all the other things. So I'm just curious from the three of you where you see things headed in the future. Kevin, I'm going to start with you down there.
Well, I know social media can be very negative, but for me personally, it's helped my career. I mean, as far as being with this positive content, basically, what is social media? Now, everybody's got a radio station, everybody's got their own TV station, they got their own newspaper, it's a magazine, whatever you want to call it. It's a little bit of everything. And it's just up to the user. How do you want to brand yourself? And that's basically the bottom line. How do you want to brand your product, your coverage? And for me, it's all about student athletes, again, being positive, what they do on the court, what they do in the classroom. I mentioned early on, we cover, what maybe an elementary age student might be doing all the way up through, hey, I just wrote an article about Trace Jackson Davis. He went to our high school, greatest basketball player we've ever had, Mr. Basketball. So we try to cover athletes at all levels. But I know people want to talk about the negative part of this, but for me, it's all positive. And I don't think it's going away. I think it's here to stay. There'll probably be more platforms yet to come that we just don't know about. But I kind of like the fact that we can, to bring information, that's what a piece of this, I should say. There are grandparents out there that live in California, I'm here in Indiana. Some of my biggest fans are those grandmas that watch from California. I'll give an example, Trace Jackson Davis, Grandma Franny. Every time I had Trace on a game or something, I said, Trace, before we go any further, we gotta say hello to your grandmother Franny out in California, or I think it's Arizona. And she absolutely enjoyed that piece. You gotta remember, these are kids, and they're trying to play a sport that they love. Yes, many will not go on to college and play, but those that can, great. But at the end of the day, you gotta check yourself. They're kids playing a sport that they love. Another thing that we do at Center Grove, we have a signing day ceremony. What an opportunity for these kids to get up and have their coach talk about them. They get a chance to talk a little bit about their experience in high school, family, friends, their classmates, their teammates come to this event. So I see a lot of positives. I know we're talking about how can we control the negatives, but I just see a lot of positives in what we're trying to do.
I'm going to play the role of Mr. Negative. I think we're at a crossroads. I think we're losing referees, we're losing good coaches. We're losing a lot of great coaches. We do this series called Coaches Confidential, and we'll ask them different questions. We'll ask them, what's the biggest challenge you face today? Want to guess what they say? Parents. Handling parents today. Parents are now on social media. It's a what about my kid society, and it's my kid did nothing wrong, and it's why aren't you writing about my kid? You always write about that kid. We are at a crossroads, and I started doing high school sports because of the purity of the sport. I don't know if the next step is middle school, because I don't know if, when we find out later, middle school maybe just as bad. It starts at I think the AAU, the travel ball. I mean, I tell people right now, I'm probably about ready to write a column on how we're in a crossroads in Tennessee where we're having super teams being formed. People traveling, transferring to schools. Hate to say it, the three letters, NIL. NIL is being abused through parents, and they're finding ways to get kids collectives or whatever. It's out there. We can say it's not, but it's there. So how are we going to police it? How are we going to improve it? I think it starts with administration. I think administrators need to take, I go back to the ejection policy. I think it's the best thing TSPLA's done in a while. To me, it makes every administrator accountable for what's going on in their gym, on their football field, on their baseball field. That way, they're going to stop the bad words and everything before it happens, or before it gets to the point where that person's being ejected. At least that's what I hope happens out of that rule. I hope this is a good first step, but it is a lot different. It is a lot different world. I ignore a lot of it. Sometimes I'm one of those guys, I'll write 5 different tweets, delete it before I post. It's like, do I really want to go there? Do I feel like starting this, getting involved in this right now? And a lot of times, I don't want to touch it. But it's out there, and if we don't do something, it's going to get even worse.
The drafts of my tweets are where all of those stay. If anybody ever hacks into it,
I delete it so I don't accidentally push publish. So.
Social media, where's it going? You've probably heard coaches say you control what you can control. We can't control social media. You know, that's up to Elon and Mark Zuckerberg to figure that out. So whenever we're talking about how social media may change things or the impacts it may have, I always come from the headspace of, well, what part of this can I actually do something about? And that's mostly how I engage with people on social media. If people ask me a question, I'll answer it. If people are, you know, disrespectful or whatever, I ignore it. If it keeps becoming a problem, I mute them. I don't ever block anybody, but I'll mute them. They have no idea that I'm not going to see what they send me. You know, it's just a matter of self-control, I think. And then I think that by, you know, not engaging and driving the temperature up and not, you know, giving people the fight that oftentimes they're looking for, you know, I think that helps play a role in calming things down some and in setting a better tone.
Great. Well, thank you all very much, the three of you, and let's give them a nice round of applause today. Thank you all for being